All right, what's going on, NavalX community? Mohawk Matt, as usual, I've got some awesome NavalX teammates with me today and a fantastic, oh yeah, give me one of those. Everybody knows. The team knows that. There we go. The great screenshot. Great screenshot right there. I'm going to pass the line over to my teammate, Dr. Marina Theodotu, who's going to introduce who we're talking to and what today's all about.
Thanks so much, Matt. It's a pleasure to always, like I always say, it's a pleasure to be on a Mohawk Matt live event. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. We have the pleasure of welcoming Mr. Alonzie Scott, who is the Director for Mission Support at ONR for the Department of the Navy. Welcome, sir. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
Yes.
Thank you.
We also have Mr. Captain Frankfurter, who is the Director of NavalX. Mr. Brad Goodrich, Deputy Director of NavalX, Commander Mike Pine, who just joined NavalX as a rotational, and Ms. Carrie Schindler also joined, who's a member of the NavalX team, also here on rotation. And I'm on rotation from DAU, and my interest is the workforce of the future and the talent. How do we develop the talent that we need? And Mr. Scott, you're one of your mission responsibilities is the future of the workforce for the science and technology community within NavalX. So I'll turn it over to you to expand on that.
Absolutely. Well, look, welcome. I am pleased to be here with NavalX today. It's an honor to stand before my colleagues in this distinguished looking panel here. Looking forward to hearing your questions. But let's talk a little bit about the future of naval STEM, science and technology workforce. And the way I look at that process involves 3 W's for me. One is about the work itself. The other W is about the workforce. And the other W is about the workspace. And everything that we look at in terms of how we manage that capability in the future has to focus on those 3 areas. So let's talk about the work. The Navy is always looking for innovative products and services. And one of the challenges I think we have is that not necessarily knowing what products we actually will need in the future. So one of the things I try to tell people is the workforce is one of the most important elements of making all of this work. If you don't have the right type of talent in your organization today or projected for the future, that becomes problematic. So here's one of the challenges I think Navy faces. There's something called an elephant dilemma. The elephant dilemma is this. When you have a baby elephant, for instance, in a wildlife reservation, or you get one at a zoo or some other place, maybe the elephant has just been kept in an area because it needs to be protected, and you've tied a little elephant to a tent pole or peg, that little elephant usually cannot pull away from that to break free from that at all. And guess what? As that elephant grows larger and larger and larger and larger, that elephant still won't break away from that little tent pole. So I'm trying to get the ONR workforce, the science and technology workforce of the future, is to break away from the tent pole, because we've got to keep up with our adversaries who are actually doing much better in a lot of our areas. Now, I know there's this premise that we are Americans think, well, we're best at everything. We are great at many things, but that can only last so long if we don't do better in terms of finding the great scientists and technology experts we need within our portfolio. So one of the things I like to say about that is there's a quote by a famous guy by the name of Warren Buffett, and it fits well for the science and technology community. And it says this: much of what you become in life depends on who you choose to admire and copy. So I'm saying to all of us, at some point, we need to be looking at industry and copying that and admiring it. And there's also a lot of folks in government we need to be copying and admiring. So we need to have this constant freeway going back and forth to find the talent that we're looking for that's going to make us the best in the world or maintain our competitive advantage today. And so for me, the other aspect of that science and technology workforce is that there's 5 little skills that I'm interested in people having. One of those skills is futuristic thinking. And what I mean by that is you cannot put yourself in the box where you're not thinking about the different areas that we can focus on. You have to be absolutely creative. You have to be innovative. You have to think beyond what's in front of you today. It's almost like when you're watching the show Star Wars. I mean, we know that's a fantasy, but believe me, if I were an engineer today, I wouldn't be looking at that as a fantasy. I'd be looking at how to build some of that stuff, because that's an innovative way to look at the world. And in some cases, we have to rely on that kind of industry to even think about the possibilities that are out there. The other thing I think is important of these 5 skills is you have to have something called courageous leadership. You've got to take on the status quo, and you have to challenge it at every chance you get. I'm not saying you need to be insubordinate. Officers, don't do that. Your career be ending if you do something like that. But you need to challenge the status quo by asking questions. Who, what, where, why are we doing these things? Are there better ways to do something? Are there more significant ways to make a difference in the organization? We have to constantly question the status quo to get that courageous leadership. And one of the other things I think is absolutely vital of those 5 skills, you have to have something called emotional intelligence today. We have such a diverse population in America today. You need to be able to play in that arena. The only way you can play in that arena is by having this emotional intelligence. You got to know how to relate to people. You have to have relationships with people. You got to learn how to build those relationships. If you're not figuring out how to do those things, that creates more problems for you in terms of being successful down the road. And obviously, you got to know how to have interpersonal communication. That's the next skill you need to have. And I'm always thinking that's something we need to work on. It is not something we're all excellent at it. And if you know, in our S&T community, many of those individuals tend to be introverts. And if they're introverts, that's going to put a lot more pressure on them to communicate. Our job is to figure out how to make that happen. And then people who are not communicators or introvert communicators need to be working with the extroverts, and the extroverts need to step back a little bit and help their colleagues bring themselves along forward. Because you know that John over in the corner here is one of the smartest people on the team, but John doesn't talk very much. So your job as a leader sitting in that meeting is to go, John, what do you think about that? And if John doesn't answer on that question, you come up with another question to ask John, so you get John's value added input. And I think the final one, I think the skill I think we need to have is something I call cognitive flexibility. Now that means you're thinking about creativity, you're thinking of how to be adaptable, you're thinking about how to get out of your comfort zone, always. So, and that drives something we all should have, and we want all our S&T folks to have, is curiosity. That curiosity will drive us to do many, many things. It's the reason I exist every morning, and I tell my staff this every day. If I don't come into work with all the energy, I'm not showing up for work that day, because I know if I don't bring the energy, they're probably not going to have it. And also, I want to be excited about what I'm doing every day. And the only way I know how to do that is to bring the energy and be excited about the deliverables we're going to bring the fleet in the future. So those are my little introductory comments there.
So, sir, how do you bring the energy? Are you walking into your office like tambourines and?
Well, look, so first thing you have to do when you bring energy to the job. So every morning, of course, most of you know this, if you're working in a military organization, we tend to have what is known as stand-up meetings in the morning. It may be 10 to 15 minutes where everyone goes around the room, tells the boss what's the big issues of the day, right? Well, I do that too, but I also do something else. I try to find out, make something funny about their morning. I talk about their kids. Like, I give an example. One of the individuals that work for me has a son. The son has gotten a bachelor's degree in engineering, and that son has decided that they don't want to be an engineer. Now, I don't know about you. I'd be a little bit uptight if I had spent all that money and my son had gotten an engineering degree and does not want to be an engineer. And oh, by the way, the person graduated with honors in engineering, okay? But doesn't want to be an engineer. So I told my employee at that conversation after I found out this, I said to him, look, you have your son talk to me. I will talk to him for the next year to convert him into an engineer. And that's the kind of energy you want to bring to a conversation. Don't always start off your conversation with the topic of the day. Talk about something that they value more than anything else. If you don't do that, that creates more challenges for you because you're not connecting that way. You're not building a relationship that way. So you have to connect to people by knowing something about the people who work for you. If you don't know that, you're not really leading either.
Definitely. Well, sir, we've got a question related to energy. Someone says energy is cyclical. How do you deal with the motivation during the down? And maybe this question's for anyone that's online right now.
So how do you deal with the motivation when during the down?
During the down, like when people are down or your team's down or maybe you're down.
Well, that's an interesting observation question. Being in the COVID situation, it is hard to gauge down on a camera unless someone's face that you know them personally to the point where you can read their emotions on a camera. That's very difficult to do. The only way I know to do that is to constantly be asking your people questions and engaging them. Even if they're down, they're going to respond to you by whatever question you ask them. So I think that just using the question methodology works very well for this, because if you don't, you won't know unless we get in another room and I can actually use my other senses of watching the individual personally and watching their hand reactions and their emotions. I don't get to see all that in real time on a camera. I can see someone shake their head, on the camera, but it's not the same effect that I would get if I was in a room and I noticed that, especially after I make a comment.
That's right. Sir, you made some really great points about empathy and about the skills that we need for the workforce of the future, including the futuristic thinking and the cognitive flexibility, which I love. We're actually tying that to the growth mindset, which is the seminal research that Carol Dweck did. And her book is on the CNO's reading list. And actually at NavalX, along with the Commander Pine, we're building a course as we speak on innovation leadership skills. And we're including in there the growth mindset, how to develop it, and what is it, and how can we identify elements of a growth mindset strategy as individuals, but also for our teams and our organization. The second element ties to the communication point that you mentioned, which is how to storytell. It's so critical to be able to translate numbers into words and words back into data and numbers so that we can have conversations with the scientists and the business people. And also the other two elements we're focusing on are networking, which you highlighted, being able to connect with others. And as you pointed out, empathy is so critical in doing that. Empathy is at the core of emotional intelligence. And the fourth element is connecting the dots. So being able to connect the dots and see patterns where there are seemingly none. And you highlighted that, where you said we need to be thinking and looking at what others are doing in industry and academia and adopting and adapting that into our efforts. So we're super excited to share that with you, that we have something in the works that hopefully we'll be able to roll out as an MVP, minimum viable product, and as a course through NavalX in April.
Oh, outstanding. Yeah. Well, see, I like that idea of growth mindset, because I'm thinking if I'm a leader in an organization, I've got people working for me, and if I'm following a regimented process, I'm creating the rut structure, as I might call it, for people to operate in. I'm probably not going to produce very many innovative ideas. One of the things I'm trying to get my folks to think about in an O&R is I want to create one innovation every 6 months for every employee and every job. Now, I mentioned that to folks, and they went, what do you mean? I work in, for instance, I'll just use EEO for an example because there's some standard process. When I work in EEO, I don't really know what I could do innovative in that area. And I was thinking to myself, well, if that's the case, then the regiments that you're talking to me about is not going to produce any more results in our organization by you just doing the same thing over and over. So what we did, for instance, in the EEO office, we each year there's something called observance events. They have Black History Month, Women History Months, and all these things. And normally all the organizations go out and get speakers. And I'm sure all of you participated in that. So one of the things I said to one of the individuals in our organization, I said, why don't you just go out and pick out a couple of stories about some famous person that happens to be a woman during that time period and produce a small blurb that we would share across the enterprise on a consistent basis. So the individual started doing that. And the next thing you know, he started getting feedback from people who saying, wow, I didn't know that was out there. I had no idea. But even such a small thing as that is something that can change the mindset of the organization. Now, the person I'm talking about that did this in our organization happens to be a person that's blind. So you imagine the amount of effort it took for them to go out and figure out what story to find, what story to write, and also make sure that person can tell the story in a way that people who can see know what they're trying to say. That was very powerful for our organization, and we continue to do things like that. And there's some other innovations I'm going to work on, but I really want every person in our organization to think about their job, no matter what it is, one innovation every 6 months. Now, if you think about that, if I got 300 or 400 people, that's a lot of innovation in our organization. And all I'm asking is one every 6 months. I think every person in every organization can actually do that.
Yeah, well, and I think that's great, sir, because a lot of the time innovation gets talked about around technology, and you can innovate in process, like you're saying, in any realm. So it's inspiring to hear that from a leader like yourself, not in technology, saying, hey, go out and innovate, because that's often what we get at NavalX is you guys aren't doing any tech. Give me some tech. Give me some of that tech innovation. And we're doing people and culture and process and learning, like Marina and Mike are doing with this new class.
Absolutely. And guess where the technology going to come from? From the people. Technology doesn't invent itself. Well, not yet. Anyway, but people drive the technology. It's called standards, process, people, technology. Those are the elements of system engineering. If you do those well with people, the innovation will surface in your organization.
Definitely. We just gained Captain Butcher back. I want to ask him a quick question. He's on his way out the door. How have you seen the acceptance of innovation change over your 30-year career?
Oh, it's changed like so many other things in the Navy over the past 30 years. I mean, it wasn't even a word being used. We were using, I think, Deming and TQM, Total Quality Management, and then it was Lean Six Sigma for a time. I think now the difference is the realization that innovation in the commercial markets is ongoing, and where there's a lot of methods and practices that are being, I would say, commonly used and have been used for a long time in the commercial markets are uncommonly or not used very often inside of the Department of Defense. And so, finding ways, to actually bring that in has been, I would say, met with a lot greater acceptance. And that's something that NavalX has been working on, and especially in design thinking and lean startup and Agile Scrum. Again, methods and techniques used, widely in the commercial sector, but not necessarily so in federal government. So, but I think that leadership sees this as a huge benefit. And it's, I think walking out the door, I see the significant improvement, positive change, and that's the direction we're headed across the entire Department of Defense. So, even though I'm headed out the door as a director of NavalX, I think I'm leaving on a very positive note, and I'm looking forward to see the changes that I think are even coming more so in the future.
Well, I mean, it speaks to the space that you're standing in right now, sir. That's not That's not the government that we're used to with a bunch of cubicles. That place,
That's right.
that's NavalX, and it's in its own right is thinking different,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
As one of my last tasks, I pulled this ship in to this space right here in NavalX. I could have gotten fired for that normally, kind of
Right.
pushing this into this spot here. Okay.
Well, Captain, as you said that, I was thinking that I didn't finish my other W, which was workspace, the 3 Ws. So workspace can be anywhere today. That's the other element that's going to allow me to get the talent I need around the world as well.
Yes.
I don't have to have people come to Washington, D.C. anymore, or Arlington, Virginia. Wherever they are, if they have the skills, knowledge, skills, ability, and the right behaviors for us to do work, I want to hire them where they are and have them work remote anywhere around the world. Now, that is a huge paradigm shift for a lot of our leaders, because some people seem to think they've got to have that person in a room so I can walk by and see them and assume that Bobby's doing his job every day, when in actuality, Bobby probably is doing the same thing Bobby's been doing for years. Maybe not as much productivity there. But I'm thinking I want people to work for R&R and the Navy and any of our other syscoms anywhere in the world. And that's the model we need to be promoting today. And I think this opportunity that COVID gave us, unfortunately, gave us a lot of death in our nation, but it also gave our country another way to look at innovation and perform innovation anywhere in the world today. And we've got to take advantage of this opportunity, because it may not come around again in our lifetime.
Yes, sir. I think that's very good words. Brad, Mike, and Carrie. The middle row has been silent here.
Well, that's because we've been talking so much, dude.
There's so much brilliance coming out. It's hard to jump in. Yeah, I would just like to highlight the Tech Bridge spaces, including our own NavalX space in Alexandria. They're great forums to sort of get out of your comfort zone, think about new ideas. I just talked to someone at the Pentagon. They want to use the space on Thursday for a small meeting of 5 people, just to share new ideas and sort of get uncomfortable out of their existing roles.
Brad, it's hard to listen to you with Sir Wells a lot over there.
I'm competing for screen time. And if we think about a new model in the future going forward, the government's not always going to be the one in charge. The government does not need to be the entire sponsor for a whole project. We can be a 10% or 30% sponsor and bring in academia, industry, and other non-traditional partners. And the spaces that we have allow us to level set that conversation of, the government does not always need to be the one running the show. In fact, many times we have ideas that are not the best ones. And we really want to hear from academia and industry over.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got a question coming from the audience, actually from Colonel Jim Shelton out in Camp Lejeune, good supporter of NavalX. And hopefully, sir, as I say that, you're still supporting us. We'll throw this one to the group. Maybe Mr. Scott's got insight here. How does innovation impact Pcsing? We'll start with that question.
Permanent change of station, that's what he's referring to?
Yes, sir, I believe so, sir.
Okay, well, let me take a shot at it, and then everyone else can jump in it, because if you've traveled as a PCS person like I have as a civilian, moving to R&R, this is my, I think, 12th or 13th job, and at least 6 or 7 PCSs in that process. So the idea on the military side, I don't know if we will ever change the PCS process. What I think could happen if we chose to innovate it in a different way, maybe not necessarily have you go through all the housing and all the paperwork that we need to fill out to make that happen. Maybe we issue you a credit card with all your benefits on that one credit card up front and allow you to go take care of it the way you want to, versus creating all this paper trail of everything. And oh, by the way, the credit card company will track all your expenditures. So if you got yourself in any trouble, we would know it anyway based on your expenditures. So that's one innovation I think could be done, but I don't know if anyone else is even looking at PCS as an innovation project. Well, that would be a great one to check out. But I think using the credit card could be a very, very innovative way to change all of that process. Just one card does everything for you. Don't have to do the paperwork. Just get a set of orders and make it happen.
Boom. Mike Pine, you got insight on that? You raised your hand.
I do actually. So where I came from before I was at NavalX was OpNav N1, working for the Chief of Naval Personnel. And sir, I'm happy to report that was exactly one of the things that they were looking at as part of innovating around the PCS process for military. So there have been messages go out to parts of the fleet who have been encouraged to pilot an initiative where if you get advance pays for your PCS to pay for the hotels and stuff during your move, those advance pays wouldn't be dumped into your checking account as had been traditional. It would instead be part of your government travel charge card that many of our sailors already had. And so they're working through that pilot. I want to say they've expanded it now to anyone who's doing a move and wants to do it may do it. And if it keeps proving successful, they may move it to where that becomes the way you do it, and instead of dropping money into your checking account, unless it can't work for their credit card, and they flip the bit that way. I would also say, kind of what would innovation do to us PCSing? Maybe part of that question for Colonel Shelton. And from my perspective, the remote telework capabilities, as we're using even now, have been greatly beneficial to us. But I think there'll always be room for having bases and having kind of like-minded people together, in the same room, in a similar area. And even when you're innovating, that may still drive the need to want to do PCSs. We were just talking before this with someone from Crane, Indiana, where a lot of the work they do needs to be away from the waterfront. It needs to be away from people, and so that's why they're there. And we'll continue to see innovators, kind of needing to be co-located with other similar innovators. So maybe we see less frequent PCSs, but I think we'll still see people rotating around to either work with innovators or to just start working on something different, right? And keep that curiosity going throughout their career.
Yeah, and Mike, you're correct. We still have to have air bases with people operating airplanes and other things. So that will happen. However, maybe some of the people don't necessarily have to be there all the time. They might travel in for a fleet up kind of exercise that's going on. I think in Hawaii, they have the PAC fleet event that's out at sea where we're doing all our testing and different things. Well, maybe no one needs to come in for PCS at all. Maybe they're just there on TDY for instance. But I do see that the idea of using the credit card is just a no-brainer to me. I don't know why we didn't do that years ago. I'm thinking about this tremendous infrastructure that we have in place today that's costing us millions and millions of dollars of inefficiency if you just issue the card and say, hey, you get here at this date, and the employees are smart enough, and sailors in most cases as well are smart enough to figure out what they need to do to get where they need to go for their employment opportunities.
Yes, sir. And I wish I could say that it was just something we hadn't thought of and then we thought of it and it was easy. But I think the reason that you didn't see it earlier is because it actually turned out to be much more involved to get out to the fleet than we had hoped for. And, we surmounted many obstacles to do that. But in the future, there will be more obstacles yet for the next innovation technique. And so we can start to shave those down.
Well, I think it's more than just the cost save on the government side. As someone who TCS, temporary change of station, to come to NavalX a year and a half ago, I'm still fighting DFAS to get paid to move here.
Exactly.
From 18 months ago. Like, it's ridiculous. And I submit it and it fails over and over and over. And luckily, I'm okay financially that it's not hurting me, but there are employees that it does.
Exactly. Just so that if we want to pour on the sorrow story there, it took me, when I moved to Philadelphia, it took me 3 years of the 4 years I was there to get paid.
Wow. We got another question here. I'm going to keep us going. Sir, how much time do you have until you have to go, Mr. Scott?
I'm on for, I don't have anything else scheduled because I wanted to make sure I gave you all the time, and I promised Marina whatever she needed me to do, I was going to be here, period.
Thanks, sir. Excellent. We've got another great question, and it's about How about the mentor protege program? You talk about the workforce of the future that you're working towards. Are there changes to the new mentor programs, protege programs? What is your insight on those that exist and where they could get better?
So let's talk about the mentor programs. So if you think about mentoring in most of our naval organizations, there's two ways mentoring occurs. There's a formal process and an informal process. I would submit to this group and all our people that are listening in today that most of mentoring occur on an informal basis. People that you admire, that you talk to about your career and they give you options and so forth. Now, the formal process, the Navy has a tool I think in TWIM's called mentoring tool that you can actually go in and find experts around the country and solicit them to become a mentor for you. I haven't used that tool, but I have been pinged a few times to be a mentor. But I think the innovation piece for me to find mentorship probably has to do with me being more in relationships with those individuals, meaning they have to know a little bit about me. I have to know a little bit about them so we can decide whether or not it's important for us to build this relationship or even if I can help them in any way. I think one of the other things I think is important when you're working on a mentoring relationship, you should have yourself a set of questions that you want answered to help that person get their career started, whether it's about their career, whether it's about family, because all of those things are going to come up in those conversations. I'll give you an example of that. I have a young lady who is trying to become a senior executive. And of course, that entails a lot of commitment on their part. So one of the things I asked this individual is, are you willing to give up more of your time to take on these extra duties as a senior leader in the organization? Well, the individual has young children, which you know that's going to take them a lot more time. Has a husband that's working also, and she is also trying to get a master's degree. So if you look at that, young kids, master's degree, husband working, she's probably doing most of, I'm not saying that men don't help out in the house, but I'm going to go out on the limb here and say that she's probably doing more of the work in the house, period, taking care of the family. So I had to tell her, I said, you know, you really have a lot on your plate right now. Do you really need to go after that opportunity right now, or would you like to wait until you can take some things off your plate and focus on that new opportunity that you're interested in doing? So those are the kind of conversation I think you must have when you start to mentor people. You have to find out about what their lifestyle is all about, what they're trying to pursue in life, what their career goals are, and it is time consuming if you're going to be a good mentor. And I've done that on occasion where now I think I probably have about 145 to 150 people that I talk to at least once a month. Someone will call me up about something involving their career. And then there are others that I'm helping write their ECQs. And that's another element of becoming a senior executive. You got to write these ECQs, which are based on a concept called content, condition, actions, and results. And you got to be able to articulate that in 10 pages or less for all 5 ECQs. And they've got to tell the story. And that's a challenging feat as well. So I try to mentor people to help them do that. So the way I do that now to get them to think about that SES role is I tell them to start working on those things almost immediately when I meet them, no matter where they are in their career. I might say to them, look, mold your career around the 5 ECQs, period, as an entry-level person, because everything in the government is always going to be about leading people. It's always going to be about leading change. It's always going to be about achieving results. It's always going to be about building coalitions. Those are vital for you to be successful in the organization, no matter what. And you're always going, I'm sorry, I didn't give you the 5th one. The 5th one is business acumen. You got to have that as well. All 5 of those are essential, no matter where you are in the organization. So I molded my career around that many years ago before I even thought about becoming a senior executive. And I'd be quite frank, the senior executive thing, I was more interested in becoming a senior executive 15 years ago. However, it happened a year ago now, almost last year. I became a senior executive, but it wasn't on my actual plan at the time. I know that sounds kind of strange, but I had figured out at this time that I didn't really need to do that. But some of my mentors, who happen to be senior executives, made another comment to me that says, "Hey, look, Alonzie, uh, you need to make a decision right now because we think you have the best skill sets to apply for this job at ONR." And I wouldn't give you all the words they actually said to me, but there were some really tough words that they had with me about applying for the job. And that's the kind of conversation you also have to have with everybody that you mentor as well. It's got to be a serious conversation. It can't be some willy-nilly conversation about what you're trying to do to help the individuals. You got to be honest and say to them, Mohawk, look, I want you to help me fix the PAO community and tell me how you're going to do it. And Mohawk has got to give me some ideas on how that's going to work. And if he doesn't give me ideas, I'm going to ask him more questions about how do we get to that level. He's going to say,
Hello.
so this is a tough piece for our organization, but formal and informal mentoring is what it's all about. And most of us already have people in their lives that they can turn into formal mentors and also informal mentors.
Definitely. No, definitely, sir. That's excellent answer to that question and advice all around. Carrie, we're coming to you next about your NavalX experience. I do want to say, Alonzie, as Carrie gets ready mentally, that, and I'm calling you Alonzie now because you called yourself that. So I think the name Alonzie will go really good with a Mohawk.
Yeah. Well, when I was in Corsica some years ago, I found out the meaning of my name from a French librarian over in Corsica. She was showing me a picture of the Moors. There's a flag called the Moors flag. And I was over there and she says, well, she opened up this little book in the library and showed me my name. It was French nobility, the way it's spelled, Alonzie. And so I learned a little bit about myself, but I don't consider myself noble at all, no nobility at all. I see myself as a frontline warrior, even in this role today.
There you go. Fantastic, sir. We're going to pass over to Carrie. Carrie, what's your experience at NavalX been like?
Well, it's been great and completely different from anything I've ever done before. In fact, my very first experience with NavalX was taking a CAW class. I took that was the very first thing I did was I took the design thinking course from the Center for Adaptive Warfighting. And I remember making the comment at the end of the class that I thought it would be incredibly valuable if everyone in my organization were to take this together. And I remember the instructor at the time thought that was such a revelation that, yes, because it's this great course where you can turn around and you can take it to your job the next day and you could do it with everyone that you work with, and it would be transformative, I think. So I'd be interested to hear, sir, your thoughts on how training and education can sort of lead to that, to what you were talking about, innovation, leadership skills, and things like that. Because between that and then my introduction to design thinking, where we took a large group of us took the Summer of Design course, and I learned about design thinking. I had never heard any of these terms before, and now we use them every day, and it's so fascinating to me. And so I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that, on leadership, training, and education, and how we can get better at that.
So when you think of leadership development and training and education, I think the real element for all of us in this organization or any organization is if you don't have the curiosity and energy to learn something new or be excited about new things that are around you, and if that's not part of your makeup as an individual, it is hard to drive yourself to do the leadership and development things that you're talking about. I'm not saying you have to be a type A personality to do all those things. What I'm suggesting is there's got to be something intrinsic that's motivating you to go do something different. Or in this case, something that is inspiring you to pursue a different avenue in your career, in your job, in your life. For me, for an example, I've always had a passion for computers. As a young kid, I've had this great passion for it. And when I was growing up, there was a TV show called Lost in Space. It's on Netflix now, right? But I'm going to tell you something. I was so excited by the idea of having a robot that I went to the local junkyard and started grabbing things that I thought that could build a robot. I got a sprocket to get wheels to make the thing roll. I got a radio because I thought I would be able to turn that into a speaker so it could talk. And then I had some electrical wires to figure out how to plug it all in to make it work. And I made a cardinal mistake that I did not understand engineering electronics very well. Because when I plugged that crap up into my grandmother's house, I blew out every circuit in the house just about. But the lesson I learned from that was, my curiosity is still that way to this day. I find it fascinating to read new ideas like design thinking, or if I'm looking at dimensions of how we improve human performance. If I think about relationships and attitudes and values and habits and actions that are necessary to get you there, those are vital concepts for me, and it drives me to do more. So if you have this passion about any idea that you have in your head today, my thought is pursue it, because it's going to allow you to get to the leadership level where you want. If you're trying to be something that you're not, I think the word is an authentic you. The authentic you has to always surface, because if it doesn't surface, you're going to fail at what you're trying to do for yourself, or be frustrated to the point that you will never finish what it is that you're trying to pursue. So, there's a book I read some years ago by artist or writer, Dale Carnegie. It was called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's been around for decades. And one of the concepts in that book was you have to have a genuine interest in other people. Now, to have a genuine interest in other people, that means you got to have an interest in yourself first, because that comes out to the other people that you're trying to convey a thought or an idea to. So in case of the leadership mode that we were talking about, it's the same thing. The authentic you, Carrie, has to always be available, because if you're not there on the mainstream, working the issues for yourself, it would become more challenging for you as a mother, as a leader, as a parent. All those things will come into play, but you've got to be Carrie always. Don't let anyone change who you are. That's what makes the diversity of our nation work so well. And I think that's something we sometimes forget. And I say this in women's case because many of their models happen to be women, men that they're trying to emulate. And I don't want women to ever emulate men. Be who you are. If you're running the organization, run it the way Carrie would like to run it, and have everybody else adjust to you. I'm saying that with all sincerity, because women tend to do that a lot in organizations. They go, well, I'm going to be like the guys. Well, no, don't be like the guys. Be Carrie. They can adjust. I mean, we might be a little Neanderthal at times about a lot of stuff, but we can adjust to these things. Okay?
There you go, Carrie. You heard it there. Don't try to be like us.
Thank you, sir.
So that's fantastic, sir. I really appreciate this discussion. I'm going to throw a question to Marina's way, or Dr. Theodotu's way.
Call me Marina.
You can jump on it as well if you'd like to, or anyone can. The question comes from Renee Reynolds. Do you have any ideas on how to navigate leadership programs in the COVID environment?
Absolutely. I think Mr. Scott already alluded to that, and the whole conversation here has alluded to this concept of lifelong learning. And Mr. Scott started with the 3 W's: work, workforce, and workspace. And we've all experienced the COVID pandemic and all the difficulties and pain that it has brought us. But also it has been the accelerant to push us to actually embrace this lifelong learning from anywhere. So when it comes to leadership development, I always say that it's at our fingertips. So you can actually meet people online, meet your mentors online. I'm actually mentoring 2 women right now through the Executive Women in Government program, and this is the first time the program is being run online, and it's been working swimmingly because we are using this online platform. We're using Zoom or FaceTime, and we meet every 2 weeks, and we have these great conversations and try to guide them, but also connecting with your tribe. And you can do that on Zoom, on MS Teams, or on LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. This is not a product or endorsement, but it is a platform that has worked really well in keeping us not only engaged and connected, but also informed. I learned so much. I learned so much from Matt, who's posting all these great videos, and from all the other peers and colleagues from within the DoD, but also from outside the DoD, connecting with people that are different than you, so that you can learn something different from them. So it's a constant curated incoming learning experience that's curated by the LinkedIn algorithm that I have every day on my phone. So it's a fantastic tool. So when it comes, and then the other thing is reading. I read a lot. For those of you that know me, I'm always talking about a book, and I'm also old school. I have the hard copies because I like to write in them and take notes, etc. But that's the other part. Some folks are visual learners, so you have to read the hard copy. Some are auditory, so you can listen to it on Audible. But there are a number of great books out there. I would recommend DoD Reads. It's a great listing of books that you can actually check. And we've also built a book club at DAU, and we also have a virtual book club, that is, so that we can, at the DAU Alumni Association. So we're actually inviting the author of the book and discussing it. And we also have, I'm running the Think Differently workshop. Actually, it's a webcast. And so those are every month. And tomorrow we actually are talking about rebel talent, not the insubordinating type, but the creative thinker type. And we've invited Professor Francesca Gino from Harvard Business School she's actually discussing her book. And we have 4 members of the workforce, including David Schiff from NavalX and Ryan Connell from DCMA. We have Josh Smith from Tang, and Molly Kane. So we're trying to create these platforms where people can connect and learn from each other and cultivate leadership that way. So connect with others, read, and focus on exploring learning from different sources, so that you can build your own learning journey. And it all goes back to what Mr. Scott said: be you, and then focus on your own growth, and seek mentors that can also guide you.
Wait a minute.
Hey,
He
Matt.
didn't say to you. He said to be like Carrie.
That's right. Be like Carrie.
Be like Carrie.
Carried away.
Be authentic Carrie.
Carried
I
away.
was gonna add a little comment on Marina's comment on reading. There's a premise that readers are leaders, and that is true. One of the challenges I've discovered since I've gotten this job is that I don't have as much time to read. So what I did, and it's something that you can think of doing as well, is that I got a subscription to summary.com, which has all the top books out there. So when she mentions a book, or anyone else mentions a book for me, I go read the summary, and that determines whether or not I'm going to spend the time to read that specific book. But I also want to get all the nuggets from those books. So that's what I use on a consistent basis. It costs me about $170 a year, but it is the most important tool I use for keeping up with the current books in the marketplace.
That's great advice, and I'm going to add on to that too, because as Marina talked to, we all learn differently, and I want to learn from books, but reading itself is actually very difficult for me. And so I'm starting a new adventure. And anyone that knows me knows I'm addicted to podcasts right now, hosting them. And so, yeah, Brad knows. And so, but what I'm doing is I'm starting another video YouTube series where all the books in my house, I've been compiling all the authors, and I'm going to interview all of them, because that way I can learn some of the information they have faster. Eventually I'll read them, but it'll take me years and years, but that way I can gain some of that knowledge. And so I empower others to be creative at learning, reading. And I've talked with some of our teammates about this. For me, reading is actually, I start sweating, like my dyslexia kicks in. It's really, really hard. So I had to find different ways that I could intake that information. And that's one of them. So that's my think differently add on to all of that.
So let me ask the team a question that I have online here. What type of culture do we need to create to reimagine the science and technology workforce of the future?
Brad, you've been quiet for a while.
Yeah, I think we need to focus on empathy, kindness, listening skills, all the things we espouse at NavalX. It's really hard to do that when we're moving in a fast-paced, high-energy environment to sort of reflect and think back and, where are they coming from before they say those words, or what is their background, walk a mile in that man's shoes kind of thing, or that woman's shoes. And it's really challenging, but we're striving to do it every day. And it goes a long way when you can do it, for me.
I love that. I will add to that a culture of learning about ourselves and about others and connecting the dots. But overall, it needs to be a culture of continuous learning, which includes the curiosity and this focus on asking new questions to old problems and finding new ways to create new opportunities and new technologies that can give us the decisive edge. But we can only do that if we are engaging and connecting with others, understanding others, and having diverse teams that allow the different perspectives to be heard, because diversity is fundamental to innovation.
Okay. The reason I asked that question, because it's one I've been tasked to be on an O&R culture team, and I come up with a simple definition for culture, which is it's the sum of all our collective behaviors in the organization. And the reason why I'm saying that, because if you think about beliefs, for an example, if someone has certain beliefs, it may take decades to change a belief. If they have a value, I might be able to get to that in about a year, some years to change their value system, because they've grown up with a certain type of value system, and it's hard to change those. If they have a habit, I might be able to change that in a few weeks, and to get to some kind of action, that might take me a couple of months or so to do something. The reason why I'm asking that is because I know that is changing culture is the most difficult thing to do in an organization. Even with all the great things that we're talking about here as an innovative organization, if the culture fights us, that means our job becomes fourfold to battle against that. So that's something I want to make sure this team understands and push harder. Even when we run into these obstacles, we've got to figure out how to get past them.
Well, I love that, sir, because as not self-proclaimed bureaucracy slayer, I did not give myself that name, but I wear it proudly. But often the confusion is people think it's just about barreling in and like forcing that culture change. Like, I'm just going to force it. And that's going to work for about 8 seconds. Probably it's not. I'm probably going to get written up because I was too intimidating. But it's more often about just, hey, it's the empathy side. It's the understanding. Why is the culture this way? There are some reasons, like innovation can't be everywhere. It's not a good idea to innovate as a aircraft is taking off a ship. That's probably not the best place to apply innovation, design thinking on the side of a carrier while a plane is trying to land. And so it's knowing and understanding the right places to apply. And that empathy side, as you've talked to many people have today already, that empathy side is huge in the cultural transformation. Because without that, we're just going to butt up against each other and and they'll just wait you out. Especially when it's civilian versus military. Well, military commander comes in, oh, he's got all these ideas. I'll just wait him out. He'll leave he or she'll leave in 2 or 3 years. It's one of the hardest things to face. So I just recircle to that empathy piece of understand why the culture is that way. Maybe it can change, and yeah, there's some ways we can and should, and then just understanding why people do it and why it's there. So we've got we'll say we've got 5 more minutes left to give us a solid hour, Mr. Scott. So one more around the room. Does anyone here have questions for him? There's a number of questions in the chat. We'll make sure those get answered later on. But Brad, Mike, Carrie, Marina, Frank, anything for Mr. Scott or for the group? Nothing. All right, Marina, Mike.
I would love to hear to get more answers for Mr. Scott's question from Mike and Captain Futcher and Carrie on the culture, the type of culture we need to build. I know they have some great perspectives.
Yeah, I'll add only because it's something that I've been doing as I prepare to step down as NavalX director and transition into civilian life. I pulled off essentially some of the first books that NAVC introduced me to when I arrived as a lieutenant in 1995. The books by Stephen Covey, like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I started with that book. So I'm going through that series as a part of my preparation and transition into civilian life. And it's very much in line with a lot of what we were talking about and empathy and trying to, first seek to understand, listening and these are just some basic skills. And so my thought process was, I really need to go back to the basics, just because sometimes internally inside of the Department of Defense, the culture can create habits that may not be in perfect alignment there. So that's just one of the books that I'm pulling off the shelf, just to sort of make sure that I'm resetting my programming in some ways and make sure I'm right, even though I've been at NavalX for almost 2 years.
And one thing I would add to all that is how do you avoid going too insular, in a career of government service, when the innovation that is happening out in the private sector is sometimes even outpacing the stuff you do. Is that kind of more frequent rotations with industry and coming back to a warfare center or the R&D enterprise? Is that kind of bring in experts from industry more frequently to do like lunch and learns? But that's one thing I find intriguing, especially kind of looking at it more from an IT perspective, where there's so much innovation in the IT space. I know we do a lot of research on things that maybe the private sector doesn't care as much about, and so that doesn't apply there. But I think it's difficult, because then it becomes even hard for us to contract out for the stuff we want from the private sector, because even the people writing the requirements don't necessarily know what to ask for anymore, because the divergence has just got so wide.
That's an interesting perspective you just offered there, because right now, if you look at our model for providing products and services to the fleet, is we take what's in industry, move it into the DoD domain, and maybe we need to have another model that says we take things from government and move it into the public domain. That's got to constantly be going on. And I think to get the true innovation we need, I think the folks who are experts in our fields today need to be moving things to the fleet quicker, because they know what we're looking for or we need to combat our adversaries. Because of our secret clearances and the information that we have internally, the public domain does not have that. So we've got to start using that expertise and knowledge to go get the actual products we need in the future.
Went on mute. It has to happen at least once. Carrie, do you have anything to add related to the culture question?
Just one really quick comment that I keep thinking about, and that's the idea of curiosity that you brought up earlier, being curious. Sorry, that was my dog.
Okay.
I wish that was something that we did better. I think all of us at NavalX are here because we were curious about something else.
Yes.
And doing business in a different way. And I wish that organizations in the government were better at tapping into that curiosity that people have. And when something sparks an interest, I wish there was an easier way for people to kind of go about finding that and not being so stuck in one job. You know, it's commonplace once you become a core, for example, that you're just a core for the rest of your life because there are so few of them, or it's a very niche job. And
Sure.
so, you know, but people don't want to be a core for the rest of their life. So I think I just wish that there was a way that we could tap into that curiosity a little bit better. And I would love to see more, you know, sharing between organizations and sharing between, even in the same organization. I think you could do that a little bit better.
Yeah. So Carrie, you remember that idea I mentioned early on that says have every employee create one innovation every 6 months? That's one way of getting out of that.
Yeah,
And dedicate and give them time, so many hours a month to work on something they think is very interesting. You could do that. And every manager in our organization has the flexibility to do that. They just don't.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important. That's one of the questions that we feed as we're in our rotation cycle right now to hire new folks. That's one of the questions I always ask is, great, we're bringing you on to do coding, but what is one thing you're going to solve while you're here? What's something different that you're going to do? And we're going to give you 20% of your time to do that. Before we go, sir, we got one really good question that just came in about you. What is the biggest lesson that you can share from your career of learning and growing? And
biggest lesson I can learn from learning and growing, I would say perseverance. Perseverance would be one word I would use. And if I had to add something to that perseverance word, it would probably be becoming a expert or leader at a specific skill or career area that you're interested in. And then persevere in that one area for a long period of time. That could help you. I'm not saying that I want you to be pigeonholed in one direction, but that alone, I think once you become an expert at something, people start looking for you versus you trying to look for them. That's exactly what all of you do when you're looking at a project you're working on. You go find an expert. And that expert is either someone that's published something, wrote something, did a lot of presentation, invented something, started a company, something that you have determined that made that individual an expert. So we need to start looking at ourselves in that light, like someone who is in the government, who is an expert in contracting. Believe me, companies on the outside of the marketplace like Boeing and General Dynamics, they want to see you because you're an expert in something that they need, which means you're adding more value for them to hire you. Captain, that was for you, by the way.
I was thinking that. And in the chat, the private chat, I was thinking of a brand. We each have our personal brand.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'm glad you said that was for the captain because he's the one that asked the question. So, sir, we really thank you for your time and coming here today. And is there anything else you want to leave us with?
Well, listen, all I want to say, if you continue to do great things for the U.S. Navy, we need you. We need our Navy to be strong because the stronger Navy we have, the stronger nation we have. And I'm just proud of all the things that you've been doing at this organization. I'm glad to see you be part of the O&R organization family now. And if there's anything I can do on my end or anyone in my team that can help you, by all means, seek me out and we'll do what we can to make it happen.
Fantastic. Mike, Carrie, Brad, Marina, Frank.
Thank
all
you.
Good. Thank you. Anybody that's on the screen, don't hang up yet. Everyone else, have a great day. And
take care.
See you next time.
Bye now.